July 1945, the world's greatest minds create a weapon capable of destroying everything. The Manhattan Project, the most closely guarded secret in human history. They thought this power was theirs alone. They were wrong. Among them was him. Klaus Fuchs, a brilliant physicist, a humble refugee from the Nazis, a man everyone trusted, and the most dangerous spy in history. While his colleagues celebrated victory, he was methodically copying every screw, every formula, and sending it all directly to the Kremlin, personally to Stalin. He single-handedly stripped America of its ultimate trump card and gave the atomic bomb to the Soviets. He didn't ask for money, he wasn't blackmailed. So what drove a genius who had fled from Hitler to give the most feared weapon in history to another dictator? To understand how the brain of a brilliant physicist became a safe for foreign secrets, we must return to a Germany that was itself descending into madness. The Weimar Republic, a nation humiliated by defeat in World War I, crushed by economic collapse, and torn apart by political extremists. The air was charged with hatred, and in this air, a young Klaus Fuchs was coming of age. He was the son of a pastor, but his father believed not only in God, he believed in socialism. From childhood, Klaus absorbed the idea that serving humanity was the highest duty. He joined the Social Democrats, believing in democracy and reason. He studied mathematics and physics, seeing science as a way to build a better, more just world. But on the streets of Weimar Germany, reason was a forgotten currency. And then came 1933. Hitler was in power. For Fuchs and his friends, it was the end of the world. The Democrats he supported were powerless. They were either arrested or silenced by fear. Fuchs watched as brown-shirt stormtroopers beat his comrades in front of his eyes. He saw his country sink into madness, and he realized, you cannot negotiate with evil, you can only fight it. And so he made his choice. The only force that hadn't surrendered and continued the underground struggle was the communists. For Fuchs, this was not an ideological choice, but a practical one. They were the only soldiers left in this war. He joined them, becoming an activist. Now he was no longer just a student. He was an enemy of the Reich, and the Reich knew it. After a clash with the Nazis, his name lands on the Gestapo's blacklists. He is a wanted man. There is no turning back. He flees. First to Paris, then to England. To the British authorities, he is just another gifted refugee escaping tyranny. They grant him asylum and the chance to study under the greatest physicists, including Nobel laureate Max Born. Britain gave him safety. Britain gave him a future. But they didn't understand the most important thing. Klaus Fuchs's body was in England, but his soul and his war remained in the underground. He believed the Western democracies were as weak as the Weimar Republic, that they would betray and surrender to fascism again, and that the only real power capable of stopping Hitler was the Soviet Union. He was a soldier without an army, waiting for his orders, and very soon those orders would come. The Second World War began. While bombs fell on London, Klaus Fuchs worked. His mind, capable of seeing the structure of the universe, was too valuable to be sent to the trenches. He conducted research for the British military. But in his head, a different war was being waged. In 1939, Stalin signed a pact with Hitler. For communists worldwide, it was a shock, but for Fuchs, it changed nothing. His logic was as cold as a mathematical formula. The enemy of my enemy is my temporary ally. But then, on June 22, 1941, Hitler attacks the USSR, and everything falls into place. Now, Britain and the Soviet Union are allies. His loyalty to communism and his work for Britain are no longer in conflict. On the contrary, Fuchs decides it is his duty to make this alliance truly equal. He sees that the Western powers do not fully trust Stalin, and he decides to take justice into his own hands. He didn't wait to be found. He made the first move himself. Through old party connections, he sent a message. I'm a physicist working on important military projects for the British government. I'm willing to share information with the Soviet Union. In Moscow, at the main intelligence directorate, the GRU, this message had the effect of an exploding bomb. A German anti-fascist scientist, a brilliant mind working for the British, offering his services. This wasn't just a potential agent, this was the jackpot. The irony was devilish. While Soviet intelligence assigned him the codename Otto and prepared a handler for him, British counterintelligence, MI5, was conducting its own background check. And found nothing. Fuchs was perfect, quiet, modest, reclusive, completely absorbed in his science. In 1942, he becomes a British citizen. Shortly after, his unsuspecting supervisor recommends him for Project Tube alloys, the codename for the British atomic program. It was a golden ticket to the world's most protected secret, and MI5 gave the green light. His double life began. By day, he was Dr. Fuchs, one of the theorists calculating the feasibility of a uranium bomb. By night, he became Agent Otto. He met with his handler, the legendary spy Ursula Kaczynski, known as Sonia. He passed her his calculations on uranium isotope separation, the theoretical basis of a chain reaction. Everything that formed the heart of the atomic project. He didn't do it for money. He did it out of conviction. He believed he was saving the world from a monopoly on the ultimate weapon. But the British project was just a warm-up. The Americans, having launched their gigantic Manhattan project, asked the British to send their best scientists. And on the list, of course, was him, Klaus Fuchs, the quiet German physicist, the perfect spy. He was being sent into the heart of the beast, to a secret city in the desert that wasn't on any map, to Los Alamos, where Robert Oppenheimer was already building the bomb. Los Alamos, 1943. This place didn't exist on any map. It was a laboratory city, built from scratch in the middle of the desert, the most secure facility on the planet, where the world's best minds worked in total isolation to create the atomic bomb. And it is here, to the most secret place on Earth, that Klaus Fuchs arrives. FBI security was confident. The place was airtight. Every scientist was vetted under a microscope. Their mail was opened, their conversations monitored. But Fuchs was a ghost. He didn't engage in small talk, drink at bars, or have affairs. He poured all his energy into his work. He was valued for the incredible speed and accuracy of his calculations. Oppenheimer and the head of the theoretical division, Hans Bethe, trusted him completely, and he was given access to the most vital secret of all. By the time Fuchs arrived, the basic principles of the uranium bomb were already understood. But uranium was incredibly expensive and rare. The real breakthrough was the second bomb, the plutonium one. It was far more powerful, but infinitely more complex. The problem was how to make the plutonium core compress with perfect symmetry to start a chain reaction. This process was called implosion. It was the most difficult mathematical and engineering challenge of the project. And guess who became one of the key specialists on the mathematics of implosion? Klaus Fuchs. He didn't just have access, he was one of its creators, and he passed everything to the Soviets. During rare trips to the nearby town of Santa Fe, he met with his new handler, an American communist named Harry Gold. In June 1945, 1 month before the first test, Fuchs handed Gold the single most important package in the history of espionage. It contained a complete, detailed description of the plutonium bomb. Dimensions, materials, explosive lenses, the initiator. Everything. In Moscow, upon receiving these documents, the head of the Soviet atomic project, Igor Kurchatov, told his scientists, "This changes everything. We're saving years of work." July 16, 1945. The bomb worked. The desert was lit by the light of 1,000 suns. Fuchs's colleagues celebrated, were horrified, wept. Oppenheimer recalled lines from the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And what did Fuchs feel? No one knows. Perhaps satisfaction. He was the only person on the planet who knew that this terrifying monopoly on the apocalypse would not last long. He had personally made sure of it. The war was over. The world celebrated. Fuchs returned to England a national hero. He was entrusted to lead the development of Britain's own atomic bomb. He was at the top of his game. No one suspected that Soviet intelligence's greatest asset was still at work. But in the cold corridors of American counterintelligence, A quiet but distinct signal had just been heard, a signal that led directly back to Los Alamos. The countdown for Klaus Fuchs had already begun. While Fuchs was designing the British bomb, thousands of miles away in a building called Arlington Hall, American cryptanalysts achieved the impossible. Project Venona. For years they had struggled to break the Soviet codes intercepted during the war, and then, in 1949, they managed to decrypt several messages. In these fragments of information, words appeared that made FBI agents' blood run cold. Los Alamos, bomb, blueprints. They soon identified the courier, Harry Gold. Raymond. After his arrest, he told them everything, and he mentioned his main source, a brilliant physicist from the British delegation. He didn't know his real name, but he described his appearance, his habits, and the times of their meetings. The net was closing in. The signal from the FBI arrived in London, and the case was assigned to him, William Scarden. He understood that Fuchs couldn't be pressured. Any direct accusation, and he would clam up like a safe. So Scarden chose the only correct tactic. He became not an interrogator for Fuchs, but a psychologist. Over weeks of conversations over tea, he created an illusion of safety, pushing Fuchs toward the idea that a confession wasn't an end, but a relief. He appealed to his conscience, and the tactic worked. Worn down by years of living a double life, Fuchs broke. On January 27, 1950, he confessed to everything. Calmly, methodically, as if dictating a scientific report, he listed all the facts of his decade-long espionage. For Scarden, it was a triumph. For the Western world, it was a catastrophe. In August 1949, 6 months before this confession, the USSR had already detonated its first atomic bomb, an exact replica of the American Fat Man. Now everyone understood how they had done it. The trial lasted only 90 minutes. Fuchs offered no defense. He received the maximum sentence, 14 years in prison. The public was furious. Politicians demanded his head. But what truly drove him? In his confession, he said, "I was sure I was doing the right thing. I believed that the secrets should belong to the whole world." He wasn't a naive idealist, but an arrogant genius who decided that he alone had the right to shape the fate of the world. He served 9 years and was released. Stripped of his British citizenship, he went where he was considered a hero, to communist East Germany. There he continued his scientific career and lived the rest of his life in honor and respect. He never expressed any remorse for what he had done. To the world, he was a traitor. To himself, he was a soldier who had done his duty to the very end. The story of Klaus Fuchs is more than just a spy thriller. It is a parable about how a brilliant mind, blinded by ideology, can bring the world both salvation and damnation at the same time. He wanted to create balance, but instead he started the most dangerous race in human history, the nuclear arms race, a shadow that hangs over us to this day.